Eventide's new Instant Phaser Mark II plugin is based off the world's first studio phaser. But did you know most people that use them didn't use the intended effect? We're going to talk about the history of flanging and the inventive ways people use this gear to enhance their sound. One of the beauties of creativity occurs when things are used in unintended ways. This holds especially true when it comes to recording and studio effects. Groups like the Beatles and Pink Floyd and producers like Phil Spector challenged what was thought possible. In fact, many of the effects we use today were once hard to perform studio tricks. For example, the plug-in flanger in your DAW is emulating an ancient studio technique known as tape flanging. In the 1960s, engineers discovered that they could delay audio by using two tape machines separated by several feet, and they could vary the delay by pressing a thumb on the tape reel flange, hence the term flanging or flanger. The song Itchy Coo Park by the Small Faces demonstrates this effect.
Come out to groove about, nice and fun.
Eventide was one of the first professional audio companies to create purpose-built hardware boxes designed to emulate tape flanging and phasing effects. We spoke with several engineers who used the original hardware boxes and learned important aspects of these products. Many times these boxes were not used as effects, but as sweeteners. From 1971 to 1974, there were very few electronic boxes in the studio, and it was common to patch these toys in when mixing. This was also at a time when the audio market became fully stereo. Believe it or not, stereo was not the standard in the late 60s. The Beatles, Rolling Stones, and Bob Dylan's hits were almost all in mono. FM radio in the early 70s helped usher in stereo. While the Instant Phaser was designed to simulate the tape flanging effect, it incorporated a new feature. It had an auxiliary output. In other words, mono in, stereo out. And that made it possible to use the box to spread a mono source across the stereo image, to add depth, to sweeten it, to make it enveloping, to make a track like a snare, hi-hat, guitar, or vocal stand out in the mix. And engineers quickly discovered that the Instant Phaser could be used on everything, all the time, not to create an effect, but rather to sweeten a track. But how did the Instant Phaser create pseudo-stereo? It used a series of analog all-pass filters. The phase shift effect, a simulation of flanging, is achieved by varying the response of each of the all-pass sections. The Instant Phaser's aux output taps the series of all-passes in a different place than the main output. The result is that the two outputs are different in their phase characteristics. They are decorrelated. This sounds sweet and interesting. By panning the two outputs left and right, a stereo image is created from a mono source. In the studio, engineers would patch a mono track in and print the outputs to the left and right mix. The phaser wouldn't be modulating. Manual control would be selected and the knob adjusted for best result. Eventide called this pseudo-stereo. Even the original Instant Phaser hardware manual describes this as the main use of the box. The phasing was used from time to time as an effect, but pseudo-stereo was used on everything all the time. You'd have to go back in time to realize how revolutionary the Instant Phaser was. It needed explaining, and our main explainer back then was none other than Joni DeCola. Here's how Joni put it in an actual sales letter from the 1970s. How about letting me plug it into your system to show you some new sounds? I want you to experiment so that you too can start thinking phaser. You see, back then humans had to convince other humans to try out purpose-built effect boxes. Luckily, that's not the case these days, as a fully functional 30-day demo is available at eventideaudio.com. This new Mark II version is an authentic emulation and accomplishes the same legendary sound with all the analog personality, smooth modulations, and inherent musicality of the original hardware effect box. It even has a few new features, so try it out for the unusual swimming effect or pseudo-stereo. And remember, there's no wrong way to use the Instant Phaser.